You're right
Sure.
there. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks for having me by Zoom. I might look over here from time to time because I'm on a laptop and I have it connected to a larger monitor, which I use. So I also have paperwork in front of me.
Okay.
So I've met most of you. My name is Daniel Jock. I'm an enrolled actuary and a member of the American Academy of Actuaries. The second credential is the one that allows me to work on the government municipal plans by the American Academy. And I've been working with Bristol County Water Authority for, I don't know, this is my third, fourth meeting. I work with Dave Scripter on the plan. David does a lot of the day-to-day work, benefit calculations and such, and I do oversight and review, and I prepare the actuarial reports. Future Plan by Census is a company that has acquired, it used to be United Retirement Plan Consultants, so last year I believe that was what was on the, that was the signature on the report, United Retirement Plan Consultants. That company was purchased by a Census, which is a larger retirement operation. Everything is the same. It's still me, it's still David. It's still the same. I think he moved his office, but everything is still the same. I believe the fees are still the same, Mark, although I'm not entirely sure. So the plan and review this year is it's very similar to last year. The benefits provide for pension benefits to folks who've been, with the company for a while. The census consists of mostly longer service employees at this point. One thing that I'll caution you against is that there's a good 3 people on the census that are looking to retire, and as they go, assets go with them. Now the plan is well funded for that. The plan is currently 87% funded. And how I measure that funding amount is I take all the retirement benefits that folks will receive or expected to receive when they retire and discount all those payments back to today. And I'm assuming that the assets will earn over the life of the plan 7.5% on one measurement, and 6.5%. I've developed another alternative contribution upon the advice of this board to use 6.5% as a more conservative return amount. And then when folks retire, some of them choose the pension and some of them choose a lump sum. I'm assuming that everybody chooses a lump sum because that's the most expensive thing. So in light of being conservative, I assume that everybody chooses a lump sum. When people choose a lump sum, then the payment depends upon market interest rates. And right now, market interest rates are low. So people that choose a lump sum last year and in the coming years will receive a little bit more money than I'm funding for, and I'll get into that a little bit later. So as I said, the plan is 87% funded. Last year, the contribution that I suggested to the district was, or the water authority, was $325,000. That's what was contributed. This year, the number is down. I'm only recommending $213,000, but I think the water authority, if they take that alternative funding policy minimum, will be about $280,000. If I look at a history, I'm going to pull a history of the contributions. So bear with me a moment. The numbers have gone down. The contribution number has gone down since 2017. In 2017, it was 580. And then in 2018, it was 467. 2000 year end of 2019 was 409. And the current year that just ended in 2020, the contribution was 325. The number keeps coming down because people keep retiring, so it doesn't cost as much money to keep the plan going. It's as simple as it is. And this year the contribution is down again because 2 people left. They took a lump sum with them, and also, you know, the assets, despite being a terrible year on assets, and I'm not here to discuss assets all that much. From July 1 to June 30th, you know, they weren't negative, which, you know, a lot of people lost a lot of money over the last spring. But the assets did behave okay. So that was good. That helped plan funding. There's been, you know, I've gotten feedback, you know, in past meetings about, you know, are we valuing these liabilities correctly? Is 6.5%, you know, a reasonable assumption? Is 5% for post-retirement a reasonable assumption? And so, you know, I looked at a couple of people who cashed out. We had 2 people cash out this year. Other than that, it's a pretty well-behaved population. In the first report, page 6 of the report, called the actuarial valuation report. There's 2 reports. One of them is a valuation report where I determine a contribution amount. The other one is a GASB report, Government Accounting Standards. That has a lot of similar information, but it also has a bunch of schedules at the end that are required under the governmental accounting standards. So it's things that the auditors are mostly worried about. But some of those schedules are helpful if you care to, you know, you can't sleep at night and you want to read them. They do, you know, provide a 10-year history of how the assets have done, a 10-year history of how much contributions have gone into the plan. They are helpful. But the first one, called the Actuarial Valuation Report, page 6, provides a participant summary of, you know, people that are in the plan. And people terminate, but no new people are ever added. So 2 people terminated and will retire someday in the future, and 2 people cashed out. That's all that happened. So it was a pretty, you know, well-behaved population. The 2 people that cashed out, so getting back to the point I was making a moment ago, the 2 people that cashed out, I was holding a liability for them, and when they cashed out, they actually took about 10% more than the liability I was holding. One of them, for example, was the liability was $180,000, and when they cashed out, they took a little bit over $200,000. So that's what's considered an actuarial loss. I was funding for a certain amount of money, and a little bit more money actually went out. And so when we look at this alternative funding policy contribution, if I have this recommended contribution of, it's $278,142. So I was rounding it to 280. If there's 3 people coming up to retire, or at least are of retirement age, and I don't know what those people are going to do. They can choose a lump sum cash out, or they can choose an annuity. That's their choice, and we can't compel them to take one thing or the other. We just simply hand them the paperwork, have them to go home and talk to their family and make a choice. If all 3 of them choose cash, the interest rates right now are low. So they're going to cash out more money than the plan has. And so if all 3 of those people cash out, then, you know, the plan could lose, quote unquote, lose, you know, $80,000 to $100,000. So
I don't think you mean that they'll cash out more than the plan has, but rather the more than you've actuarially allotted to them, right?
Those people.
That's absolutely correct.
Right.
Yeah. So a little bit more. So what will happen with that is if they go out and they take a little bit more money than I've allotted for them, then let's say that the quote unquote loss is $100,000.
Well, then we're underfunded by more money, right?
Yeah, and what happens is that gets spread out over the remaining people, so that the contribution goes up a little bit in the future. That's how that
Right.
shakes out. You don't have to fund the whole thing. It isn't like, oh no, we lost 100 grand. You have to come up with it. It gets spread out over the course of the remaining life of the plan. So if we want to add a little bit to the contribution now, we can, or we can wait to see what these people choose.
And I thought that the contribution was supposed to be even, whether you stayed and got paid by the company monthly, and based on the actuarial, how long you would live, versus taking it out. I thought that was supposed to be the same amount of money.
It is supposed to be the same amount of money. And what we've been using historically is that the cash out rates are assumed to be 5%, because over the course of life, sometimes it's less than 5%. The interest rate used to create those lump sums, sometimes it's less than 5%, sometimes it's more than 5%. And so over the course of the life of the plan, 5% is a reasonable assumption. However, rates are low right now, and they seem to be remaining low. So I was thinking of, changing the assumption, for this val or for the next valuation, making the post-retirement assumption instead of 5%, trying 4.5 or 4, and seeing what that does to the contribution amount.
Well, realistically, aren't those percentages even high given today's interest rate environment?
Which is 0.
No, 4 is okay. No, we're not looking at prime rates. We're looking at rates that are published by the IRS for cashing people out, and right now they're at 3.6, but a year ago they were 4.25. So it's not prime rate. It's a published rate.
No, I understand that, but why are we using 5% if the IRS is at a lower rate? It sounds to me as if you're giving people a better deal than they might be entitled to by having that 5%.
Well, people are getting the deal that's provided by the plan. They're not getting a better deal when I say 5%. What's happening is that when we recommend a contribution, if rates stay low, I may not be recommending enough of a contribution. So that's what happens. The people don't win or lose. The people get what the plan provides. And
so your recommendation on a contribution is not based upon trying to get us to 100% funded. Is that correct?
The recommendation of the contribution is designed to get you to exactly 100% when the last retiree dies. So you don't always need to track it 100% every year, because if you tried to track it 100% every year, the contribution would go up and down with asset return, and would go up and down with discount rates. So the reason for using 5% is because currently rates are below, but in the future they might be above. In which case, when people cash out, instead of having a loss, the plan will have a gain. And that was the case, many moons ago. But interest rates have been so low for so long, and I don't know if.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem to me there's any negative. If we funded this thing 100% now when interest rates are low, and the last person retires and we have a surplus in the plan, we can just recapture that. Is that correct?
Technically, yes. I've never actually seen that happen in real life. The money always gets used.
We still have to pay all the annuities.
Yeah.
We need that money.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But yes, but those annuities are at a fixed cost, I'm assuming, Mark, correct? We don't go naked on that risk.
No, the annuities are not like purchased annuities from a company. The Water Authority's trust fund pays monthly. There's about $13,000 a month that comes out of the fund and pays all these retirees. So there needs to be money in the account until the last retiree dies.
Right. Right, but that's a calculated amount. I'm talking about the people who have not yet retired.
Yeah, the people who have not yet retired, they have a choice to choose a lump sum payout or an annuity. And I sit in this meeting and say that when the discount rates are low, that means that people could cash out a little bit more money. But that may not be what they want to do. They may feel very healthy and their spouse is very healthy and they think they can beat this thing. And they plan to live to 100. If they plan to live, if you know that you're going to live to 100 years old, you take the annuity because then you're going to win. You know? So you never know what people are going to choose. It's a very personal decision.
We don't know till they sign the papers, so.
Right.
Part of what we do with the Washington Trust is they plan, I let them know when everybody's leaving what the amount could be, and they have cash available at that time. So they move things. If they all took the annuity, then they reinvest the money after the excess money. But we need to be prepared with cash at the time they retire.
And actually, so Ted, let me get to what I was saying. The last two retirements, folks cashed out, and of the next three retirements, my guess is that two of them are going to cash out. That's just my educated guess. So the reason for going into all of this is that the recommended contribution, assuming a 6.5% asset return, is $280,000. I'm asking you to consider funding a little bit more because interest rates are low and people seem to be cashing out. According to my calculations, $280,000 is the recommended contribution. That's what comes out of the machine. But knowing what we know, I think it would be prudent to put in a little bit more than that. And you don't have to fund, I used this number before of $100,000 is the shortfall between what we're funding for and what these people are going to cash out. It doesn't mean that you need to pony up an extra $100,000. It spreads out. The funding mechanism spreads out these losses over a period of time. So instead of 280, if you did like 300,
with 300
very
appropriate?
prudent thing to do. What was that?
Would 300 be appropriate?
Yes.
Okay.
After these three retire, how many do we have left in the plan?
I think there'll be like five or six, something like that.
That's all?
There are
I think there are 7 left.
Seven left after.
there are retirees. So those folks are around for their own life. And then of the active people, there are 10 on the census. And that's on the report. That's on page 6 of that report, the first report.
Right.
There are 10 left.
And we have 4 definite between now and next May, and maybe 5. So I've been talking to them, and I think Dan's about right. Half of them are kind of are looking at the annuity, half are looking at the lump sum. So that's kind of a good guess.
Dan, to clarify what you said, if the quote contribution for this year were increased by 20,000, does that mean would pay 20,000 more in, or does that get amortized over some future period? I was unclear on that.
No, it's 20 more cash in the door.
Okay, all right. And to me, the real issue is if interest rates stay as low as they are and people are cashing out, then we're going to have to pay more at some point. The question is whether we do it now or later.
Right. And I'm not asking you to pick up the tab all in one shot.
Right? Just to let you know the way we fund it, we have a pension year, which is the number we hit that Dan gives us, it'll be the 280 or 300. But I also budget during the year for the fiscal year ending in February. And that year ending in February, my budget is 325. So when I'll hit 325 and then to hit 280, my contributions drop from 30,000 a month down to 7. That brings my total down to that 280. So we cannot affect, we can increase that to 300 over the pension year without affecting my budget for the fiscal year. So we would just add another 5,000 on to March, April, May, and June, and to what I had there to bring that up to 300 for the pension year.
Any other questions? By the way, Bill, thank you for standing in. I'm sorry I was late. I could not connect. At any rate.
And one last comment is asset return helps. So I with July 1 to June 30th was a hard year to invest assets. We stayed positive, and that was good. And I'm optimistic for this next fiscal year.
The good news is, which is in my financial report, we picked up almost $400,000 in gains in July and August. That's probably
Really?
cut back a bit in September.
So in the last plan year, July 1 to June 30th, the asset return was 100,000. $130,000 entire plan year, so 400 in a few months.
From what I read today,
keep
they said that they're projecting the interest rates to stay very low for the next 2 years, at least.
Yeah.
So I think, Alan, what we'll do next month, if we want to have a vote by the board to fund, we'll have an agenda item for me to fund at the $300,000 level, if the consensus is that a little more conservative than the 6.5% discount rate, just to give a little edge to that, based on a little actuarial loss based on that. So
Understand.
that would work out fine.
I have nothing else to talk about. That was, I think, the most important thing that I think you all needed to understand about folks retiring and what that does to the plan.
Any other questions?
Yeah, one question, Alan. Maybe it's to Mark, maybe it's to Dan, I'm not sure. If we were to increase the level that we funded the plan to, we're at 87% right now. If we were to increase the level, does that have any secondary beneficial impacts on the organization, meaning that our credit rating is better or something else?
No, I don't think it would affect our credit rating at all. It would just ease up, costs over future years. But that, again, Al, we may want to look at this. Maybe you want to put in more than 300,000 to help boost that up a bit. And Dan's looking at this is, it's a long-term thing, slow and steady to get to that 100%. But it depends what the board, wants to do. In a year, if we were down to 5 or 6 people, there's going to be a point where there's only a few people on it. And then there's going to be, there is a gap. Some of these people still have 18, 20 years to work. Some of the younger people that are on the pension. So that's not going to go away real fast. But I think at that point, the authority might look at alternatives. If there is a way to fund it and get out of the liability and I don't know that. We've talked to Dan about that before of a way to do it, and
that's a process that's called plan termination, and that's the way that you provide for annuities for other retirees. You offer options for the active employees. And a big part of that conversation is what are we going to replace this plan with? Because folks are going to feel like the big takeaway.
right.
Something as big has been taken away from them. So.
It would also have to be a union vote and decision. So there's a lot that goes into it. But as that balance gets down, the cost percentage for Washington Trust goes up a little bit as the balance goes under. I think it's 2.5 million. So the cost factor may go up a little bit, but
I have a fire district retirement plan that was once larger, and now there's only 3 people left in it. And they can't get rid of it because of the, political issues.
yeah, I think that's, we may have to just ride this out.
Seems to me that we are among the highest in the state in terms of all municipalities or governmental agencies in terms of our funding. I don't know, Dan.
That's true. I did that analysis a couple years ago. Mark asked me for it, and I did some research, and you were among the highest. That is true.
So at least that, to my way of thinking, that indicates that this board over the years has been very concerned about following through on our promises to our employees and making for a stable and long-term work relationship, so that we're taking care of them. I think that's evident of what we've done for years. So I'm not sure we need to go higher at this moment, given all the things that we're doing right now, but particularly because we're already, if not at the very top, we're very close to the top in the whole state. I'd like not to bring recognition, I'd like not to bring plaudits to us as somehow that we are the highest level of funding for, in the entire state. I don't think that particular item would do us much good.
No, they'll want us to drop our rates and go down to 50%.
I mean, I'm satisfied with where we are right now. And based on everything that Dan, you've said and your predecessors have said, we are in excellent shape to assure the future for our retirees.
I agree.
Any other questions? Thank you much.
All right.
Okay, Dan, nice to see you. Thanks for zooming in.
It's good to be seen without a mask on.
Thanks, Dan.
All right. I'm going to take off.
Okay, thanks, Dan.
Have a safe trip home.
Bill, I guess I'll go on with the meeting. Public input. I don't recognize anybody here. I see Gina's on the phone. There's nobody else. Sid is on the phone, but she's not speaking. So there appears to be no one from the public. Let's go to minutes, number 4. Entertain a motion to accept the minutes of the
Make a
personnel
motion
committee.
that all the minutes be accepted as proposed.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Sid, do you have those people who made the motions and seconded them? Oh, she's not responding. Okay.
Okay.
So let's go around on that. I'll start with Gina, since she's on the phone. How do you vote?
Yes.
Okay. George,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
Tom.
Abstain, I wasn't at the meeting.
Okay. Chris, you said aye.
Yeah, aye.
All right. Juan,
Being tricky.
and I say aye. So it's 8 and 1 abstention. So that's passed.
George, you're doing a great job on those minutes. We go right through them like nothing.
I get a lot of support. Thank you.
On the minutes of the board meeting of August 27th, again, entertain a motion for acceptance.
So moved.
Gina, move to approve.
John
Second.
moved it, so Gina will second it.
Second.
Okay, are there any corrections, questions? Ready to vote? Let's go down the list again. Gina,
Yes.
George,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
Craig, Tom.
Abstain?
Technically, you can vote on minutes even if you weren't there, but that's okay.
Yeah, I don't know what happened, so I don't feel comfortable.
All right, 1 abstention. Chris,
Aye.
Juan,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So again, that's 8-4, 1 abstention. Passed. Thank you. Executive Director's Report.
Okay, I'll just give a couple updates. Just as you know, the executive director position is out for advertisement, and Sid is collecting the resumes. We are getting quite a few through the Projo, who also uses a couple of the internet services for job seekers. So she's getting a few through there as well. So looks like you will be busy sorting through resumes. And we're looking at, they close on October 7th. So Alan's going to talk a little bit later on the agenda about how that's all going to be handled. Just a couple other updates. Mark is looking to put out his retirement a little longer, so he may be here till after I retire. Which we were
2030.
talking about February.
You're one of those guys Dan was talking about.
Yep,
That's right.
yep. So it might make for an easier transition. Just
Like-
but Mark will be around to help out the next person.
Right. I thought it might be more difficult, Pam and I leaving the same time. And then whoever comes in, I'll be able to help them get through and whatever. And then, so somewhere between March, April, May, probably somewhere in there.
All right.
No place to go, nothing to do anyway, so.
Tough
Any
time of
questions for
year.
Pam? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Pam. Anyone have any questions for her?
Pam, I have a question with respect to the connection to the Pawtucket water supply. Your phase 2 double I says that we are proposing to mix the Pawtucket Providence waters to meet the Providence water quality parameters. Why are their parameters relevant? I didn't follow that.
Well, right now we are on Providence water, obviously, and their parameters, they treat to a pH of 10.3, and they don't add any other corrosion controls. They are now going to be adding phosphate to the water, so that by using their treatment would really help continue a stabilization of our system. Pawtucket water treats to more like around 7.5 pH, and they use a polymer phosphate. So when we start mixing the two waters, the main issue is what happens to the reaction of using a different type of pH and corrosion control in our distribution system. The health department is mainly concerned with lead reactions. In our case, we have very little lead in the system. And we do have some of those lead goosenecks, which we have been replacing. But there's a new lead and copper regulation that's come out, and that's going to also focus on the customer side services. We don't know of any customer side lead services, but we do know we have some galvanized in the system. And if they've ever been connected to like a lead gooseneck, it's going to be considered a lead service. So we do have a few of those in the systems as well. But by treating the water to the Providence standard will be the simplest for us to change to. And the system is already stabilized at the higher pH. So we think it would be the best way to go, and certainly the easiest way to get the program through the health department's concerns.
Does Providence standard mean that we will then achieve the pH level that they are using?
Yes.
Okay.
So if we mix a lower pH and the higher pH, we'll have to add some caustic, essentially, to raise the pH back up into the 10.3 range.
Okay, thank you.
Keep in mind that even when we get the connection to Pawtucket, we will still purchase water. Even if we were going as much as we could from Pawtucket, we would still take 1 million gallons a day to keep the water moving from Providence. So either way, we need to take the water from both sources. So this is a long-term arrangement. Obviously, if we were taking 3/4 of it, of a $4 million, 4 million gallon a day, 3/4 it from Providence, we would have a different amount that we would have to adjust. Is that correct, Pam?
That's right,
Okay.
depending on what the ratio is.
Pam, at what location do we add any of those chemicals that are required? Or anything that is required?
Actually, we were looking at perhaps building a chemical addition station upstream from the Barrington location where we have Middle Highway, because that's our first takeoff off the pipeline is at Middle Highway.
Well, now what would happen in the future if East Providence does go in eventually to Pawtucket? Where would they, would we have any problem at all with, once they'd have to mix too, wouldn't they?
Right, they would have their own mixing station, depending on how much water they wanted to take. Essentially, we'd have the Pawtucket pipeline comes down through East Providence. We have our own takeoff. They would have their own takeoff themselves. So they would balance how much water they wanted from each system, and then they would be responsible for mixing their own supply.
Would the mixing station require acquiring additional property?
Yes, it would. We were looking at actually the park in East Providence. There's actually some state property along in there. And we were along the bikeway route, which would be anywhere along in there would be a good spot for us.
I presume this is a small facility.
It would be, right. It's just a chemical addition.
Okay.
So you just essentially need a tank with some injection system into the pipeline and some instrumentation. It would be pretty minor.
Would that require a standby generator so that it was working all the time?
If it did, it would be pretty small. You would not need a large generator because you're not pumping anything other than just a small amount of chemical.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Any other questions on any other aspects of her report?
I just want to mention
On
we did get
reports by the other folks.
Okay, I just want to mention we did get the drawings in for the elevator. So we're reviewing those and hopefully we can get them out to bid pretty soon.
Ah, okay. Okay.
And yes, Sue, if you want to bring us up to date on construction.
Good evening. Hi. Everything's going along pretty smoothly with our contractor. While construction, the cleaning and lining is moving along in all of the towns. In Barrington, we are finished, and we'll be actually even doing the final paving in Barrington before the end of the year. In Warren, if you recall, everything was split into 3 phases, and phase 2 is now complete as far as the cleaning and lining goes. The people on phase 2 are still on the bypass system. It has to get tested, and then they'll get connected back to the existing mains. That'll happen in the next, probably next week and the week after. And at the same time as they break down the bypass piping for phase 2, they will set it up for phase 3, which is the last section. It will be the northern section of Main Street and Union Street in Warren, and a few side streets. So they'll move on to phase 3. And in Bristol, if you live in Bristol, you may have noticed that they have started setting up the bypass system on Hope Street. We had hoped to complete all the work on Hope Street while the Silver Creek Bridge was still under construction, so there'd be less traffic, but that COVID made sure that that did not actually happen for us. But it is cleaning and lining, so it's not a full trench excavation. We don't anticipate really any problems there. So bypass piping is getting set up on Hope Street this week. Customers, probably a couple more weeks for the customers to get switched to it. And then the cleaning and lining will be in October. They're also finishing up the Rockshaws and Ryan neighborhood. They're almost done in that area as well, with a couple weeks for switching people back to the new main. So right now, everything's just moving along. We're hoping the weather does not turn really cold in the next month, but we should not be running as late as we did last year. We should be getting finished up by the end of October, middle of November.
Thank you, Sue. Anyone have comments, questions?
I have a question. How are we doing budget-wise versus the contractors?
On that project?
Yes, the project for the relinings.
We're on budget. We haven't had any major change orders that required any additional funding. We did go back to the board for some additional funds when we added the extra streets. But aside from that, we've had only some minimal change orders and requests for additional money. So we're on budget, under budget.
Is Mount Hope Avenue included in that right now?
So Mount Hope Avenue, we did ask the board for the additional money, but we have not finalized an agreement with either the contractor or the town. The town does have a new DPW director. So we kind of went back a step and are bringing him up to speed on that project and making sure we have all our agreements with the town as well as with the contractor. If we do add Mount Hope Ave at this point, it might happen in next year, next spring. It's getting kind of late in the fall now, so we'd probably push it to the spring.
But that is already funded, correct?
Yes, by the board voting for the additional funds, yes.
Thank you, Sue.
Any other questions? Any questions for Mike for his part of the report? I don't see, Randy's not here. Anyone have any questions for Mike?
Mike, just maybe an update on Hope Street.
Yep, so the first of 3 projects was successfully completed. We worked with AA Wrecking, included some pictures there. They brought that structure down after remediating some of that documented hazardous materials. Brought in some clean fill, and we are ready for the next project. We're hoping around the first week of October that we can mobilize our lead remediation contractor and begin the soil remediation, capping, ELUR, and related processes. Following that, pump station, we're trying to get that advertised as soon as possible. We do not have a final design yet, but the design continues. We should have a driller out there imminently to characterize the subsurface conditions for the foundation design. But otherwise, the first project went off very well, and we're looking forward to moving on through completion.
Thank you. Any questions?
Question, are the hydraulic calculations completed for that pump house?
They are not. We're looking at, they've quantified a demand that we're looking to satisfy. But how to efficiently introduce that demand into the system without causing damage is something that we're still trying to quantify. We're looking at a few different pumps. We're engaging a couple of different pump vendors to see essentially what we're going to look at is what the gross demand that we're looking from the system, and then how much we can turn it down at the discharge pressure requirements, so that we can keep a little bit of positive flow, so we don't introduce significant energy waves or water hammer once demand is essentially called for. So we're still trying to flush that out so that once we do, so we can settle on a pump, impeller size, and components, and finalize the interior piping. So that is still in process. We're working with PAR on that.
That answer your question, Bob?
Yes, I'm just wondering when that will be completed so the sizing and everything else can be done for the pump house.
So everything's running parallel. The sizing we're talking is, as far as what we need to determine, is inches. So the rough layout is complete. We don't anticipate major sizing changes for the facility as a whole. We're trying to optimize with different pump types as far as its arrangement and suction, split case, all different arrangements. But we're trying to optimize that with a vertical end suction so that we can keep everything compact and footprints as small as possible.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on to the next item. The financial report.
Okay, everybody has the August statement.
Yes, we do.
The having a heck of a year, despite all the distractions that we face. But the combination of a very dry summer, the 10% rate increase, that we're 6 months into the year for August. Actually, September is almost over now, which is 7 months. On bills that have gone out through the end of August, the gallons delivered is up 9% over last year, which is significant. But we have to remember last year we were partially on water restrictions in the spring. We kind of let them go loose in the summer. And then scaled back again in the fall when we started to do the relining. So, but this year we're expecting the billing for the summer continues, since we're on quarterly, continues into September, October, which will keep our collections very strong right through November. So we're in great position there. That's on billings that go out. On the accrual that I put in my financials, revenue's up 14% over last for the year, and expenses, we've been able to keep expenses again at a minimal, just up 3.3% for the year. But that's really just depreciation, which is a non-cost. We capitalized a lot last year, got some new vehicles. Depreciation went up more than, we're actually, if you take away depreciation, just looking at cash, we're under last year for expenses. So some of our maintenance work may have slowed down a little bit during COVID, so that might catch up a little bit, but we're in good shape there. And budgets remain basically 11% over budget and revenues, and we're about 7.5% under budget and expenses. So we're enjoying the best of both worlds in revenues and expenses right now. Our debt service ratio at the end of last fiscal year was over 9. But with the debt of that $18 million loan kicking in this year, we're down to 6.5. And that should stay fairly level for the rest of the year. So again, we're in great shape there. And as I mentioned, when Dan was on the phone, our gains for 2 months in the pension fund are up $377,000. That's 9% of the fund, which is looking at 400,000 over the 4 million in the fund. So we've probably taken a little hit in September here as things get, as we approach the election. Lord knows what's going to happen there. But hopefully it'll flatten out a little bit. But we've had a good 2 months in the pension since July 1st. So other than that, everything's basically on target and above our expectations in both ways. So,
Thank you. Any questions?
Mark, I'm sure this is not a new item. This is on balance sheet, page 3. and there are two line items under equity, one being unrestricted net assets and the other being net income. What's the difference between the two?
On page 3,
Yes.
under the equity section,
Yes.
okay. The auditors last year converted, we used to have like 10 equity accounts, and they've merged them into basically those 3 categories. The unrestricted net assets shown in our equity is basically cash that we can use for anything we really want. That includes the revenue fund, the O&M fund, and any money in our project funds. So that should be about $25 million. The net investment in capital would be the combination of our net equity and all of our assets. So if you analyzed our fixed assets, which includes pipelines, land, buildings, and whatever, basically we own free and clear $42 million of that.
Mark, it's the line item for net income, which is the last one there.
Yeah, the net income, that's the net income for the year so far. That's added on to our equity. So for the first 6 months, our net income is 2.8 million.
So does that get rolled into the unrestricted net assets at the end of the year?
No, that's going to accumulate, and then from the net income, we pay our debt service, from that, and any other, anything else, and that'll net down. Any residual from that flows into our unrestricted, you're correct, into the revenue fund.
So it's more an operating account than.
So we're basically putting more money in that reserve account that Pam has long-term plans for that we'll be using up pretty quick. I might mention, I think we've talked about it before, and I've talked to the auditors, we're going to be coming into a period of several things that are non-capital projects that are going to be fairly expensive for the authority. The removal of the dams is basically not something you can capitalize and depreciate. That's basically a non-recurring cost. And in this year's budget, we're going to look at what we're going to be paying for removal of the dams. And the other one is the removal of the treatment plant. Those are one-time non-recurring expenses. So I'm going to segregate those out of the general operating budget to an addendum. And that's where some of that cash is going to go. And some of those costs are going to be quite expensive on our part. Pam might have the number.
We are getting money for the dam removal. I think we've got several grants that have come in on that.
Right, that'll be applied against it. But I think Pam, that's about half, is it? I don't know the exact number off the top of my head.
At this point, we're also going to be looking for additional grants.
Right.
We have no guarantee, but there are some other ones available as well. But we have to wait until we're closer to actually the removal. Some of those have to be used within the following year.
But the treatment plant is going to be a big dollar item to the demolition of that. And so some of that cash that we have in reserve will be used to pay for that. So that would be a non-recurring expense in that particular year or an overlap of years that we'll be facing. So I think when we get into the budget planning, that we're getting to that time of starting to draft budgets, rate increases, and everything in the fall now, that we'll be, I'll be meeting with Mike and Pam, and we'll kind of put together what, believe it or not, FY22 will start in March, and see what we think we'll be spending during that time. So a lot going on. Pam and I are going to miss it. Maybe.
I'm sure. Any other questions? Thank you, Mark. Let's move.
Okay.
Pension trust resolution. You may recall the last time we said the personnel committee had recommended moving, and then we said, let's wait and let's get a letter back from Sandra Mack that says everything is hunky-dory. I think you have in your possession such a letter. This is dated September 17th, and attached to that is a resolution we're supposed to pass. The only thing I questioned about the resolution was on the last page, or the second page, in the last paragraph, it says adopted at a meeting of the authority duly noted and held on August. It would be September 24th and again September 24th. Am I correct on that, Joe? Those are the two changes that we would make to that document when we approve it.
Sandy Mack was involved in that.
Yeah, I'm not, I didn't draft that.
Okay.
But you're correct, Alan.
Right, we would change the date on it. That was the original resolution from last month, but we would change the date on it to today.
Okay, so we have received a letter that basically says, at least as I read it, everything is fine, move ahead, and I entertain a motion to approve this resolution.
I make a motion, we approve this resolution as amended to the dates.
Second.
Second.
Okay, further discussion? Let's go down with a vote then. Gina?
Yes.
George?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Juan?
Aye.
Tom?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so it's unanimous. Next item, a vehicle purchase. Pam, you have put that into us.
Move to approve as presented.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, we got a motion on the floor from Gina. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay,
Mr.
John, you have
Chairman, I just have a question. Is this a replacement vehicle or is this just an additional vehicle?
In this case, this is an additional vehicle.
How can I ask how many vehicles do we need?
Well, this one encompasses all the administration staff, including engineering. We're paying people 55 cents a mile to use their own vehicle, which does, and be surprised, it adds up to be quite a bit of money.
Right.
I'm not trying to nickel dime, but I just wanted to make a point. Basically,
No, there's a lot of times.
I want to call the attention to all my fellow members that
Yeah.
we just approve vehicles left and right. We approve extensions of contracts left and right. We approve
This is a used vehicle.
engineering
We
services
did our
left
job,
and right. And yet when I just want to remind you that yet when a ratepayer comes in with a meager little complaint,
Okay,
I'd
like to add.
a couple of $100, we turn them down. I just want to bring that to your attention.
I'd like to add just one thing, and part of the reason on this is liability. We have a lot of people. We have people going to the post office, going to the bank. We have people going to all the town halls, adding liens, removing liens, using their own vehicle. Okay, there is a liability out there that if something happened while they were doing that, we have extended coverage for that, but it can get nasty in a lawsuit. I mean, this would help having a company vehicle that's under our large umbrella of liability for people out there doing work by the authority, no matter what it is, visiting a job site or whatever. I mean, Mike goes out, Sue goes out. People are constantly going out that a lot of people use, and Pam's right, We do pay the government rate, which is 54, 55 cents a mile, and that does add up. I think that
I have no problem. I have no objection. I just needed a chance to make my point.
How about an electric scooter?
those
That's
are
more
dangerous.
dangerous. That's more dangerous.
Or
John's just
Okay.
mad because it's not a Chevy.
That, Don, I didn't want to say that because I may get in trouble with the Ford Company.
Okay. We
So
ready to
no,
vote?
I before we vote, I have a question about something that's bugged me for a long time that kind of falls into this general category, and that is the hand-delivered director's information package to each house. Wouldn't it be cheaper to mail that?
No, there's
I
a
think the issue-
slowdown on the mail.
I think we used to do delivery, but sometimes it would take a week to get somewhere. And I think to expedite getting it, to have a few days before the meeting, we started to deliver those, and we try to be as efficient.
Let's do this. Let's do an experiment. Let's mail them next month and see if it's satisfactory. Because, it's got to be costing you a couple $100 to deliver these things.
Well, it is and it isn't. A lot of the guys, I know Sid polls them. Is anybody going to Bristol later today? So they're on the clock anyway. You know what I'm saying? So we try to schedule it around people going to the towns, or we have remote offices too at the pump stations where everybody doesn't come here in the morning. So we try to be efficient as we can with that these people are on the clock, and if they can, there are exceptions, but if they can fit it in during the day to deliver those, because sometimes we get them done on Friday for the Thursday.
Mark, I don't want to have a debate. I was just making a suggestion that we do an experiment.
Okay.
Because from my standpoint, there's higher value work they could be doing than hand delivering these things. But if I'm in a minority, just drop it. I really don't want to have a debate.
Okay. I was just kind of answering why we did it. So.
Questions on the bid? All ready to vote? Let's go down. This is the $17,000 for a 2017 Ford Escape Tasker Ford, and it has, I guess, 24,000 miles on it. Gina, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, George?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Juan?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
And I say yes, so it is approved. Okay, White Birch Lane. I understand that a letter is prepared. That letter has not yet been sent. Is that right, Joe?
Actually, it'll be sent tomorrow. So,
I thought it was an excellent letter. The only thing I would wonder if I received that letter is approximately what it would cost to put in a different water line and solve this problem.
I maybe along the same lines, I was wondering if it wouldn't be appropriate to try to arrange for a meeting with those people in the open in that neighborhood, that a note could be added. This is a complicated, we're sending you a map and we're sending you this detail, and you may have moved in here, not years and years ago, may have no idea where this line is or what the deal is. And perhaps it might be better if we had a meeting that we could get together one afternoon and talk to everybody there so they'd all see it and ask those kinds of questions.
I think the letter does offer that.
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does. I thought it was an excellent letter.
Yes, very, very well said. Well, so let's see what happens then when it goes out. I don't think we need to take an action. We've already said that there's a letter that's going to be sent, so we're just up to date on this. Let's hope that they respond positively or question me.
we'll find out.
The next item is the search. My question,
Anawan Dam. We have Anawan Dam, I think, Alan.
pardon me, Annawan Dam, yes. You sent the letter. I thought that we all have a copy of that letter, and we've already voted that a letter be sent. So again, I don't think there's any action that needs to be taken. Am I correct?
Correct.
All right, so that letter will go out and we'll undoubtedly hear back from them one way or the other.
Just to clarify, that it already went out.
Okay,
Yeah.
excellent. Talking about the executive search. I had asked to have several items sent to you. Everyone knows that the job has been posted. In the past, there were 3 members the last time around. I'm not sure we even had a personnel committee active at that time. We currently have a personnel committee. So the first question that I would ask is, do we want to have the personnel committee act as the initial reviewers of all these things that come in, or would you prefer to set up a special executive director, review committee that would necessarily be probably of 3 people, one from each town, just to do the first round of looking at all this? Before you answer that question, let me talk about 2 other items. In the past, we sent a letter out to the town administrators, the town manager, because they have managerial skills. And the thought was that we might want to also include them this time around. Once these things are all brought in, and maybe we screen them first, and the candidates who appear to us to be likely, since I don't expect the town administrators to have any knowledge concerning water issues, only managerial issues, we might, after the first round, where we've narrowed some of these down, narrowed down a group, ask the town managers and town administrators to come in, take a look at these, and use a rating sheet and give us their perspective based on what they see of these resumes. And then the third point that I'd like to bring is that in the past, we've used key staff. Mark reviewed some of these in the past. Who was the other person that, Joe, yes. Okay, so we've used internal individuals, key staff, to review these as well and give us an input. And you have, I think you have copies of a rating sheet that was developed some years ago, and that can be modified by the personnel committee. We can add, do whatever you want. I'd like to just get a feel for the way that the board would like to move with this. Once these 3 things have happened, then the board, I think, would, the personnel committee, if that's the group that you allow to continue with this, we would bring a limited number of candidates before the entire group. And that would be where everyone would have their opportunity to ask questions. I just don't want to overwhelm the candidates right off the bat. So it's open for discussion. What do you think about the plan? How would you like to change it? What would you like to do?
Alan, if I could just ask one question of both you and John. I'm trying to remember if an accounting firm or the auditor firm we had back when we were looking to fill Pasquale's position, look through all these resumes, seeing as how they were familiar with the operation, and they might have initially the best knowledge of seeing which candidates could do everything that we're looking for in an executive director. Do you remember us doing that, John or Alan? Do you remember it all?
No.
Man, I don't remember.
I don't remember that.
No,
Mark?
we used the auditors for my job when I was hired. The
Okay.
auditors reviewed the resumes
Okay.
for the financial person.
All right, but we had nobody outside for
No,
Pam's job.
as I recall, when Pam was hired, we had a search committee, I think of 3, and then Joe and I
Okay.
were also involved in that.
I think the town manager's bill would be the equivalent for the executive director position that the auditor was for Mark's position.
Okay, that's fine.
Alan, if I could.
Go to-
Alan?
Yeah.
I like the idea of having the town managers involved, because we work with them all the time, and I think they do have a lot to offer. And I like having the staff input, senior staff input as well. But one thing I just want to make clear to myself and maybe to everybody is that we're really asking them to be advisory, but not in the decision-making mode.
Correct.
The decision, they can go and give us, say, these are the top 3 people we see, but when we review it, we may see it from a different viewpoint and pick 3 other people and end
Correct.
up bringing those in for interviews. And I don't want to have a false expectation here, but we're using their expertise for advice, but we're not asking them to make a decision.
Correct.
We, just to refresh, we had no vote or whatever on the time, but we were asked questions what we thought, because there was a little different circumstances. Pasquale was not part of it. So, I mean, there's no reason, I mean, Pam's going to be here. You know, if it's Pam's position or my position, Pam knows the questions to ask that need to be asked probably, and I might need the questions to ask for the people that are looking for my position. So, but we did not vote. I think we were asked, when we were asked what we thought about things, we gave comments, but we were not part of the voting process.
Ultimately, all the board, all the directors will see all of the applications that apply. There's no intent to keep anything from you. My understanding, Pam, do you know how many, can you say how many applications have already been received?
I think we've gotten around 14 or 15 so far.
And so, you know, if you gone through this in the past, and I can tell you that I'm happy that, and it might be more by the time this closes, but I think if each of you come in there and go over, you know, 15 or more applications, I guarantee you your eyes are going to glass over. And so, you know, if you want to do it, fine. But I suspect that it might be more practical for at least the review group, the personnel committee, if you appoint, or rather do it a different way, those 3 people that start out can at least put them in 2 groups. Those that they feel are to be considered, and those that they think may not be up to appropriate consideration for one reason or another. Then when we show you everything, at least you have 2 groups to consider, and you can, you know, I just got to tell you, you're going to go nuts if you got to review 15 resumes. So, but it's up to the board.
Alan,
Alan.
I agree with Juan's principle of, and yours about bringing in the town administrators. I think we should get their recommendation in a group, but I don't think we should rely on them to give us the last 3 or so.
No. This is just to review them and give us a rating. And comment.
Oh, all right. Okay.
We would.
I don't want to see us getting into a problem later on where they say, hey, we didn't recommend that person that you picked or something.
My sense.
But
Alan.
I think we need to make explicit that we're looking to them for advice, not decision.
Correct.
Yes, that's
Correct.
part of it, Gina. George, you had a comment.
Yeah, I suggest we just follow the process that you told us about, Alan. I think it's a very good process.
But my first goal would be to meet with the personnel committee and review the details of the rating sheets, what we want to say in there. We can ask Mark, we can ask Pam for inputs to this so that we have our questions, or we have something so that when the managers look at it, administrators, they know what we're asking of them. and what we're going to be asking as we review all these things. So the first round of our discussions would be to actually talk about what it is we're going to do as we review these resumes that come in. And I consider that if it's only going to be 3 of us, that would be, we could do that with appropriate distancing by meeting with staff at the Water Authority. I think that would be safe enough. The room is open, fans, the purifiers, and at least in one session, 1 or 2 sessions, we can get this thing off ground.
I agree with that. I think it's a good idea, Alan, but I think we should keep all the other members up to date on whatever goes on at every one of those sessions.
From a natural standpoint, I think at the beginning of this, it will not be appropriate to put all the names that have applied out so that the public can get this. These people have jobs. Undoubtedly, many of them have jobs. It may not be appropriate at this point for the world to know that they've applied for this. So I would want to, at least at the beginning, to respect their individual positions and not put any burden on you or anybody else. We can have them, candidate A, B, C, D, and so on. And then when we get further along at the finals, you'll see everybody, all the names, everything, and the finals, of course, will be done so that everybody knows who it is.
Along those
Alan, if I'm not mistaken, I think you can conduct personnel matters in executive session. So there's no need to disclose people's names.
That's correct. That's correct.
And if you're going to have a meeting, to discuss this, it's got to be posted, and you're going to have to, you'll have to, I run the agenda by me. We'll have to put an executive session in.
Okay, that would be the personnel committee meeting. If no one objects, this is how we would move forward, and I'll talk to you about how we set up that meeting.
Okay.
Because you're right, we want to make sure that the names are protected, the names until we get to the final, down to the wire on this.
I think with 2 weeks to go, it's fair to say we might have 25 or 30.
Yeah.
Could be.
To deal with.
So there's going to be a lot of scrutiny to start with as we go through this process. But the personnel committee is up to it.
Alan, that brings me to a question.
Yes.
We're going to send these resumes out to the 3 town administrators, correct?
No, the goal would be to have them come in to look at them.
Okay. All right, very good.
Have them come in. This way we're protecting the individuals. We have the administrator, the managers come to our facility and look at all of these and rate them. We have a rating sheet for them, the things we want from them, their advice to us based on the things that they know about it.
Right, Alan, I think when we had the town in before, we took the names off of it, and they reviewed it strictly as a blind document of who the person was.
Could be.
Which maybe because they might know some of these people. You don't know.
Correct.
That just a blind, the part of the name could be taken out, or any reference to the name can be taken out.
I don't disagree with that. My sense is to do this thing thoroughly, carefully, and protect the rights of the individual, to protect them so that they're not getting publicity that they may not want to start with.
Right.
Okay. Pam, just one question for you. Do you see whether there's any way that any of the interview process can be conducted in person?
Well, like I said, maybe with just the personnel committee, but I don't see with the entire board. So I think we're just too many people.
Boy.
Well,
we may be able to do an in-person with a Zoom, that the Zoom could be set up to show the whole, the process to the people that aren't here.
Okay.
I'll check with Randy and see if we could, but I think you don't get unless you meet people in person.
Yes,
correct. I think that's 100% of getting a feel for that person and how they react.
Exactly.
And
we can use the Zoom meeting type arrangement as part of the weeding out process.
Right.
In discussing with a lot of younger people who are out in the job market these days, they're very much used to having Zoom interviews or on phone interviews. And then towards the tail end, that's where they end up being brought in to meet who they're going to be working with in person.
We can even ask them to stand up and see if they're wearing pants.
Oh, gee.
Don't ask me. Don't ask me.
Hey, or a skirt, or a skirt. You know, a skirt,
You know,
pants,
Alan-
whatever.
Alan, I was
Alan, I have a question.
Sure, Bob.
Once the initial cut is, if you get 50 of them or whatever, and the personnel board reviews and says, here are some selections for you, is there a way that the company or the personnel board can have a background check done before we move forward?
Sure.
I think it's vital that background checks are done on everyone to ensure we don't go down the road, hire somebody, and then find out we have an oops.
Excellent.
When you talk about a background check, Bob, you're referring to a criminal activity.
BCI.
Okay. The reason I asked,
I think you should also do a credit report on any finalists, not just a criminal
no question
background.
about that, Gina. The reason I say that, Bob, is I'm a member of the Barrington Village, and we were all checked out and volunteers. There's a national company. I don't know, it costs about $65 or $70. Everyone got a check. We were vetted by this national company. We filled out information and they ran checks on us. Now, how extensive that was, I don't know. But certainly we would want to go through those things as Gina points out, as you pointed out. Yes, that would be part of it.
Just to let everybody know too, that we do a background check on every employee we hire. So it's not just the director or management, but everybody we hire. We also check, go to the state of Rhode Island, Massachusetts for driving records to see if there's any, because if they're driving our vehicles, we need to know for insurance purposes. So we do a pretty good vetting job on every employee that's hired across the board.
So that means you already got the contacts to do that.
Yeah, we go to the
That
Secretary of
Mark?
State's office and get a report.
Okay, that's good.
We do that now.
I understand that, and I agree with that. But today's world, when you go into it, they're looking at you saying, what did you post on Facebook? What did you do here on your social media?
Yeah.
Where are you? And there are companies out there today that are validating that.
Right. Some things, people aren't smart enough today that they go out to get a job and they have their Facebook pages out partying and drinking and smoking whatever. And then companies do that. I mean, we can do that. I'll check with Randy, but there are companies that can research social media to find out if there's anything detrimental to the person.
I understand it, but I'm just suggesting and recommending that once the personnel board calls down the numbers, those things, before we proceed any farther, all those that are getting recommended for the next step get vetted through somebody for background and all those things we just talked about.
Right.
Fair enough. In fact, once this personnel group meets and with the inputs from staff, decide all the things we're going to do, the details of the process, we will report what those details are going to be so that all directors will know everything that's being covered. And if there's something that you can add to it, we're more than happy to take that under consideration. So.
Right. I think we need to check with, I don't know how much of confidentiality things we can share. Joe Keogh may be able to comment on that, or how when we do checks like that, a lot of it we do now, we keep very confidential and in their file.
Understand.
So.
All right,
There are standards for it. All we need to do is abide by it. You can call the state police and whatever, they do the entire thing. We should just have that so we don't get
Right.
6 months into a hire and you have a big oops that says, oh, you can't be here.
No, you're right. You're right. And we have Joe to advise us on this as well. So,
And after that's done, it eliminates everybody. We'll have to start over.
Alan, do you have a rough date on when the board should be making a decision?
no, I don't. I would like to do this. I'm hoping that we can get this done. Let's say if it closes October 7th, that we can get this done before Thanksgiving. I'd like to hope that we can square things away, because frankly, after Thanksgiving, it gets pretty tough with everybody's schedule to do any kind of, business. And so I'd like to try to move as quickly as we can on this.
I checked the time frame last time. We started interviewing the end of October into November, and it took us till the end of January to make the selection and the offer.
Yeah, that's
So
too long.
it takes 2 months, two and a half months. That's what it took before.
It doesn't need to take that long.
Right.
No.
Well, I agree with you, Gina. And if we can get a vaccine quicker than expected, we ought to be able to get a hire quicker than expected. But we'll see what comes in. We'll see what comes in. And I think that the variety and the experience of the people who apply will in some part dictate how long it's going to take to make the process go through.
Mm-hmm.
But clearly, we want to work out the details of how the board can interview, when you can see everything, how we get down, how long these checks take. We'll get all that nailed down so that we can move as fast as possible.
Pam, how long were you looking for to have somebody under your wing? 90 days or so?
Well, I think like Alan said, if we could get somebody in before Thanksgiving timeframe, because we may have other positions to fill too. So
right.
We want to make sure we have someone essentially selected soon enough.
I think, Pam.
But keep in mind that a person that we're going to select at a position level is going to have to probably give notice of something more than 2 weeks.
Yes.
Yes. We understand that. And I mean, there will be ways we have to deal with it. And I think we dealt with that in the past when we were without an executive director for a brief time. And so
I've seen a lot of instances.
Deal with before we, to make this thing work.
It is workable.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think so. And, because I know that Pam, having talked with her, when it comes the end of February, she's ready to go. She's ready to retire. And she won't be around the corner, so.
Well, if I'm correct, we had an acting director last time.
That's right.
I don't think we want to get into that. Really.
No, but I'm just saying that's because we had to. But we're not going to stop operating. I can assure you we will not stop operating in the event that it takes, even if we have the right person, if it takes too long, longer for them to switch from one job to the other, we'll make that work. Chris, you had your hand up before?
Alan, as a sidelight, back 9 years ago, I came across the letter you gave every candidate, and it said, "Do you know what you're getting yourself into?" And I found a copy.
You don't need to put that down this time.
I gave it to Pam a few weeks ago, and I said, "This is how we started. So you should do another one. You should say, do you know this great opportunity you're getting into?"
That's about right. Yeah. We were under heavy fire.
I got a copy of that letter. I got a copy of that letter. I'll update it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess we're all set. We'll move forward, as you've said. Do you want to take a vote on this or just accept what we've talked about? Personnel committee will move forward with this.
It might be nice to see a calendar of dates when you expect things to happen, like getting the town administrators in or going, just, not that have to be nailed down. So this way we can see how many meetings it's going to take, when those meetings will be scheduled, so that we've got our calendar for October and early November, wide open if we have to meet,
Agreed.
3, 4, 5 times.
We'll do that. We'll once, I think what I want to do is as soon as we can, we'll set up a personnel committee meeting. And that's when we'll begin to put the whole thing together.
Okay,
And everyone will get copies of that as soon as it's finished.
very good.
Okay? Thank you. We're going into an executive session. So entertain a motion to enter executive session on Hope Street tank litigation pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42465A2.
So moved.
So moved. by
Second.
Bill, seconded. Is that Gina?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
now we all got a vote to go in. So John,
Aye.
to enter, Bill,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Chris,
Aye.
Dan,
Yes.
Juan, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Tom, George,
Aye.
yes. So I think everybody has said yes. So we're entering executive session at 6:08.
Okay, we're back on live.
All right, so now we have the item is the Hope Street plant, Hope Street
Nope, nope,
tank site.
nope,
Want a
Seal the
motion?
minutes?
nope. Yeah, we're
Motion to
gonna-
seal the
nothing.
minutes.
So,
I
No
make a
moved.
motion, we seal the minutes of the executive session.
All right,
Second.
moved and seconded. And is Gina back on? No, everybody raise your hand. I see all the hands are up. It's unanimous by hand vote. Now, Hope Street tank site, anything to be said there?
No.
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 Okay, our next meeting is 10/22 for the whole board, but we will be meeting prior to that as soon as we can set up something for the personnel committee to have our meeting and get moving on that. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
It is done.